the impact on the supply chain, we touched a little bit about it, but there's the inbound ingredient piece, and then there's the outbound animals and milk and that piece of it. So what disruptions have you seen? I know, Natasha, you mentioned ethanol. Obviously, ethanol industry has been struggling. Plants have shut down. So the DDGs, the byproducts of the ethanol processing, is the corn byproduct that gets fed to animals. That is no longer readily available because of the plant shutdown. So there's some nutrition diet changes. And can you talk about how that's all impacted your business too, and the changes that have been made?
Yeah, I mean, I can start. I think you captured a lot of it. I mean, we have corn oil in our feed. That's become a really difficult ingredient to source. One of the other pieces that we haven't touched upon is some of the ingredients that are imported. And so, a lot of our vitamins that go into our turkey feed come from overseas. And those markets are really tough to access right now. Some of our other micro ingredients or nutritional supplements come from overseas. So we haven't necessarily felt the impact yet, but we know that that's coming. And the longer that this goes on, some of those things that are really staple to a turkey ration or feed program are going to be increasingly difficult to source. Like was mentioned earlier, the feed mill is such a critical link for all of us that any disruption in that is something I don't even want to comprehend. It's a huge concern.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree. I mean, we have a lot of ingredients we can feed. You can change it up. I mean, we can do a lot of alterations, but it changes your price structure of feeding. Some things just are too far away that they don't make any sense to bring here. And the same will happen in the rest of the country, as you go south and they count on the upper states here to provide with feed too. It's just a lot. It's just stopping a lot of things from happening. And yet it also limits you on what else could you use instead. When it comes to mineral, that is such a good point, because I mean, you can't get that really anywhere else. It's very hard to meet those macro and micro mineral needs of your livestock without that. So there will be a lot of challenges, and I would totally agree. At this point, we don't know, because as everyone else lives day to day, so do we, and we have to just kind of watch what's going on so we can hopefully get ready for it. But conversations are being had, ideas are being hatched. That was supposed to be a pun.
Good one.
I appreciate it.
And we just have to have lots of ideas so that when it happens, we're ready to make the changes.
And the pig side of things, we also feed the DDGs, or the dried distillers grains, and so that product is not available to us either. So transitioning to more corn. So I think that would be a bright spot for corn producers, is that you will see pork producers utilizing more corn in their diets because it isn't going into fuel production. But, Natasha, you touched on slowing animals down or slowing their growth down. In pigs, we do that by feeding like high fiber diets to make them feel really full for longer, so that they eat less and it's not as nutrient dense. And so they grow slower. Again, trying to buy some time here for the disruptions in the plants to work through. So I would say that's been kind of a secondary availability issue with soybean hulls or some of the other high fiber ingredients to feed pigs in order to get that done. So relative to the minerals and the overseas items, one thing that would be unique to pork in this conversation would be if you recall, prior to COVID completely sweeping all of our lives and news and everything around us, China and the Asian countries and the European countries were really being ravaged by African swine fever. And China had half of the world's pig population, and essentially they lost half of their herd. So in effect, 25% of the world's pigs were impacted by African swine fever. In order to protect our United States swine herd, we had at Christensen Farms, and many producers across the United States had procured additional warehouse space so that we could buy additional product, bring it stateside, and leave it sit for a period of time in temperature controlled, because in Minnesota it's cold and viruses like to live in that environment, to make sure that by the time we would feed it to our pigs, that the African swine fever virus would not be viable to impact our pigs here in the United States. So that I guess is a happy bright spot that we were ahead of that one a little bit.
Great, very interesting. Nice addition.